Let's go ahead and explore index.js. So this is where our app actually gets rendered. And we can see, I just closed my terminal there, just let that run. I can always open it up with View, Terminal, and you can see it's still running, so I just collapsed it. It now says import React from React as a string. That's a package. We installed React when we wrote npm install -g create React app. It created a package in there for us called React. Now, if I go into my node module folders, you're going to see there's a lot of stuff in here. But if we scroll all the way down, A, C, D, E, F, H, I, all the way down. Where are you? P, Q, R, S, where are you? React, there you are, React. So that's what we're importing from. Import React from React. And we can look at all the source code for React in here as well if we wanted to. We're going to import React DOM from React DOM. So if we go back in here and take a look for React DOM, there's React DOM. It's also going to import a relevant, not a relevant, but a relative, I guess it's also relevant, but a relative file called index.css. So in our index.js file, we're importing, I'll close this one, we're importing index.css. And so this is just going to add some margin and some code in there. Not margin, but some body. It includes a margin and some code in here. And so that's all that's doing. We're going to import app. This is basically our component. So if we go to app, we have a function called app. And at the very bottom, we see export default app. And what this is going to do is say, take this app function and export it. And that allows it to be importable. So we're going to import app from the same folder app. Then we're going to import report web vitals, and that comes from a relative URL, report web vitals, which is just going to report a bunch of stuff for us. We're not going to get into that in this particular module. And then we get to the nitty-gritty, the actual code. So we have React DOM, that's our document object model, .render. In React strict mode, we're going to put our app inside of it. And so this is JSS. This looks really, really bizarre, but basically our app in JavaScript was a function. We can now write it as if it were standard HTML or XHTML. And the nice thing about this is React is just going to go behind the scenes and say, oh, I know exactly what this is, and I'm just going to work with it. I'm just going to magically make it work. And so we can actually get really, really complicated with this, and we can add things like variables dynamically to each component. We'll talk about that in the future. Last but not least, we have two options in here. So this is our first argument for the render command. This is the second argument for a render command. What this is saying is it's saying in strict mode, render our app, end strict mode, and put it in our elements that has an ID of root. So if we go into our public folder and go to index.html, we're going to see somewhere in here, where are you? Div ID of root. This is where our app is going to live. So if we get rid of this, this is no longer going to work for us. So we want to make sure that that always exists. Now it doesn't need to be called root. You could call this anything else. You'll often see it called app as well. So it's just an ID of app. And if you ever change that, you have to change it in here as well. So just make sure that that's always matching. Last but not least, we are running Web Vitals. And this is really, really useful for, it tells us right here, to start measuring performance in your app, pass a function to log results. For example, report web vitals console.log. So that is some of the bizarre syntax that we're going to see with React, and that's called JSX. The main thing that I want you to take away from here, and there's no task for this lesson, is I just want you to take a look at this. Just read through it. Understand that this is being imported. This is a class. This is a method on that class. So we're getting into object-oriented JavaScript programming. It takes one parameter. We can tell it's a parameter because there's a comma here. And the second parameter is where that app is supposed to be rendered. And then React is going to compile a bunch of stuff. It's going to say, oh, React strict mode. Okay, I know how to use that. your app, it's going to understand what your app is, and it's going to render it in here as well. What's nice about this is we're starting to get into components. So if we had a secondary app, we could have another app in here, import that. Let's just pretend we imported it. We could call it app, or we could call it shop. And it's going to render our app and our shop in our document root. So once again, there is no task for this lesson. I just want you to take no, scratch that. The task is actually open up your index.js and just read through these lines here. Just sort of get an idea of how this looks, because this is really bizarre at first. This is nothing like anything else on the web. This is completely new. This is called JSX. And so basically you have a component, an ending component, and inside of it, and it looks just like HTML, we have something inside. So this is like in HTML, we could have a div/div, and then we could have an h1 inside of it. It's very, very similar. So the learning curve for this particular part is fairly low. Once you're done reading through that, let's head on over to the next lesson, and let's maybe get started with creating our first component.